even with Arch Manning and all of that reinforcement the University of Texas has, when they go up to that Horseshoe, they're going to get beat. And here's why. My whole assertion of how Ohio State plays, especially when they're at home, it's very difficult to go into the Horseshoe, or even, I'm going to just bring in Michigan. In Michigan, they were champions the last, few years, especially when Harbaugh was there. It took Harbaugh a while to get that program back on track. But once he did, you wasn't coming up in the big house and beating them. Right. The only teams that beat Michigan in the big house was teams like Ohio State. Or the only teams that beat Ohio State in the Horseshoe was Michigan. There was not very many teams that will come into those stadiums and could pull that type of thing off. Now, what's really exciting, though, that I'm gonna just put it out there, I think that Ohio State, with Ryan Day being the offensive-minded he is, and he has just made Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline used to play receiver for Ohio State. He took over as offensive coordinator for the Buckeyes. Listen, Hartline is going to have all kind of pressure on him to deliver this first game, because this is the biggest game of the year. If you look at how the rankings are, you look at the coaches poll, Texas is 1 and Ohio State is 2. So if Texas goes up in there and gets a win out of there, Texas is on their way, man. They're going to have some challenges in the SEC, but that will be one of the biggest wins of the decade, because how could they even rank Texas above Ohio State, and Ohio State is the national championship? Can you explain that to me, Najee? The quarterback, he ended up getting drafted, and he ended up getting drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's gone. So they're going to have to plug and play with a quarterback. But one thing is for sure, since they had C.J. Stroud at Ohio State, they have just did nothing but plug in and plug in and plug in. And then they got one of the best receivers in the country in Jeremiah Smith coming out of Miami, Chaminade Madonna. Come on, that kid was extraordinary last year. And he lit up the national championship. He made Oregon's defensive backs look like they weren't even there, right? This is the perfect game, I think, this schedule, because you're looking at the Big Ten versus the SEC. And for years, you got your people that side with either conference. I mean, if you think about it. Some people say the Big Ten conference is stronger. Some people say the SEC is stronger. But my prediction is that Ohio State, he's not even naming a quarterback right now. They got I think 3 kids, top-notch quarterbacks that's vying for that starting job at Ohio State. And it's going to be very difficult for Texas to go up in there. Although Steve Sarkisian, man, I take my hat off to that brother, man, because Steve Sarkisian, he's originally from L.A. He was coaching USC out here. And he lost that job, and then Nick Saban gave him that opportunity of a lifetime. And Nick Saban constantly gave coaches opportunities of lifetimes to get their careers back on track, And he was able to parlay that into something, and then he got that Texas job, and he's an offensive mind. Texas has got one of the top defenses in the country. They got Arch Manning, to me, which is... he's going to light up college football next year for sure. He's Peyton and Eli Manning's nephew and Archie Manning's grandson. He comes from a football dynasty as far as I see it, Yeah. So I'm predicting that Ohio State is going to pull out a win in this game. And if Texas pulls it out, it's going to be interesting to see that Texas is going to probably stay number 1 to pretty much the duration of the year. And I could see them going into the playoffs with a very high ranking